Thank you for having me, and thank you everybody for being here, although it is the end of the day. I feel that the organizers have a lot of humor because they decided to give you a ton of knowledge on application security and still end the day on a high note of what happens when the user messes everything up. And here we are. So like it was said, my name is Christina Lekati. I am a psychologist and a social engineer. I work with Cybersecurity GmbH on the human element of cybersecurity, which means all things social engineering, insider threat prevention, and cybersecurity culture. I am also the lead analyst and investigator when it comes to vulnerability assessments for high-value targets and corporations based on open source intelligence. And on that note, I also was an executive board member on the Ocean Curious project. But enough about me. Let's talk about Marcy. Marcy was one of these rare case scenarios when we had a long-term social engineering case, and we have evidence of it that we could publicize. Now, this was a report made from Proofpoint, but it's finally one of those rare cases where a case like this gets public. We know we deal with those on a very regular basis. Very few times do they make it to the public eye. So what happened here? Marcy was a fake social media account. She didn't really exist. And as the researchers later found out, she had a very soft spot for people working in the aerospace defense industry. She had dated a lot of different people, specific ones, contractors, people from the military, people that would belong to the aerospace defense industry in one way. But she didn't do much in the beginning. It's not that unusual to lay low for a bit, mind you. So what she did, she connected with a few people. Proofpoint found evidence of communication with one individual who got compromised. But it took some time. The first point of initiation, of contact initiation, the friend request happened in November 2019, but it took 1 full year until she actually messaged him and they started exchanging private messages. 1 full year? Why? And then the second really rare phenomenon for the public, but not for us working in this industry, they were talking for about 8 months until the exploitation happened. Just discussing. That's a huge investment of time and effort. And why? Why would they wait so long? What was happening in the meantime? Why did they need to take 8 months until compromise? We know of social engineering attacks taking what? A phishing email? A phone call? They're a quick hit and run. But in this case, it was not. And we also talked all day about security measures, technology, and here we have a cyber attack based on relationship building and psychology. So basically what she did is they started talking based on common interests, discussing, and then she escalated him to other social media profiles, to the phones. They started exchanging cute pictures. There was a little bit of flirting, and a couple of videos. What happened then? And what was the technical compromise from that? It sounds so innocent. We'll see. But one big point I'm trying to make from this case, something we have been observing and something that is coming more and more, is that social engineering attacks have been evolving. Yes, all the reports talk about phishing attacks, vishing. Most of you are very familiar with those hit and run campaigns. One email that appears to be legitimate, it's not. 2, 3 users click on it. We think that this is all of our problems. It's not. We have been observing more elaborate campaigns that have longer reconnaissance phases, which means attackers take their time to research their victims. We see more tailored and personalized approaches that are built to match the personality of the target. We see more elaborate mind games. We see more psychology being used in social engineering, and now we have the whole mess coming through with AI, artificial intelligence, deep fakes, and all this beautiful technology that will help society, but it will also help cyber attackers be more believable. If any of you belong to the critical infrastructure, to companies in the critical infrastructure or the supply chain of the critical infrastructure, rest assured that this is in your threat model. Rest assured that this is going to be one of your problems. And the biggest problem in that is it tends to fly under the radar. Yes, eventually you have a compromising email or something happens, but it's not just that. And it tends to fly under the radar. So what happened in the case of Marcy Flores? What did she do that caused a big problem? She just sent an email eventually. She said, "Oh, my dear, this is a diet survey. You should fill out." So they had a conversation about that during the pandemic. It was also lonely days back then. You should fill out your experiences, especially during the pandemic period at home. Please press enable editing. So download those macros. And then enable the content to see the full page. She sent a Google Drive link with an Excel file. It looked like this, what you see on your screens right now. And she finished, "Send me soon. Thanks for your kindness and patience. Cheers, Marcy," and of course, the winky face. What happened is that this file downloaded the Lempo malware, which was designed to establish persistence, perform reconnaissance, and exfiltrate sensitive information. Do you think it was only the malware that exfiltrated sensitive information? No. Because remember, they were talking for 8 months, and guess what happens within those 8 months? "Oh, you had a rough day at work? Tell me about it. Oh, you're deploying a new program and it's difficult. What is it? What about it?" So during conversation, there is something that's very known in the world of intelligence. It's called elicitation, and it has to do with having a regular conversation which blends in very specific targeted questions that aim to elicit specific information that is supposed to be confidential. We're going to talk about that a bit later. But was it the only case scenario? Do these things really happen? Is this a black swan event, something that you cannot possibly predict will happen because it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing? No. It happens more and more. We have more cases like that, and all of them have followed the same pattern, basically. You don't have to read the specifics. You can always get the slides later. But what the point is, the targets were always specific individuals in all 4 cases that are public. There are a lot more that are not public, but the same patterns persist. They performed very thorough reconnaissance through open source intelligence, public information. They used social media, eventually messaging platforms, yada yada, and then the end result was to exploit their targets on a technical level, either by installing malware or by harvesting credentials, leading them to a web page that was compromised and collecting those credentials. And the goal was always some sort of espionage operation, either economic or espionage. And this is the typical kill chain of that. You have a specific target, somebody that is of high value, either because they belong to the executive suite, the C-suite or the board of directors, people that have high levels of access, or they are the ones that work on sensitive projects, something that is of high intelligence interest to another entity or to a competitor that wants to sabotage your operations and decides to deploy a social engineering campaign. They used multiple fake personas. They also decided to personalize their approach, perform their reconnaissance, escalate their targets once they got them on the hook from one platform to another to appear more believable. And then the rest was casual relationship building, like you would do with a friend. And it was all based on psychological needs. Did they need company during COVID? Did they need somebody to talk with, share a hobby? They would exploit exactly those elements that we do in real life. And the exploitation of trust would happen either in the form of elicitation or malware installment. It is taking so long, and it's actually effort. Why would somebody make all this effort? What do they get in return? How does this approach help a cyber threat group reach their goals? That's because it is very, it's like a jackpot. You can do a whole lot of things out of this one approach. If it works, you can do a number of things. You can elicit sensitive information, like we said, ongoing plans, company strategies, technologies they are currently working on, business partners, the next steps, like locations, you can use transfer and pivot from that one individual whose trust you have to your actual target that would otherwise be difficult, and so on and so forth. You can lead them to a compromised web page and harvest credentials. You can install malware like Marcella did already. But there is also the case of other individuals that engage with people online. LinkedIn is very famous for that. And they initiate discussions so that they can eventually groom them and recruit them as insider threats, either knowingly or unknowingly. This one individual that complains about their work and feels overwhelmed, sometimes these people get recruited. Disgruntled employees get recruited, especially if they voice these things. Sometimes these engagements support long-term operations, so you might have no idea one of your people is compromised until it is too late because they use this connection on an ongoing basis until exploitation. It takes months. Or some sort of attack that is open to imagination. We see new techniques, new things popping up. People do not lack imagination. Threat actors do not lack imagination at all. And they just provide the hook, have a person on the hook, and exploit it in a relevant way later on when it matters to them. How many of you are familiar with NISA's threat landscape report, and how many of you read it yearly? Lift hands. Ooh, it's a very, very useful resource. So, okay, there is the link. I would absolutely recommend all of you downloading and reading the threat landscape report, especially the ones working in information security. What it does is that they provide the most prevalent threats they observe within Europe on a yearly basis. And then they make a report to inform security teams on what the threat landscape is. So this year, they said that in the top 3 of prime threats identified were ransomware attacks, malware attacks, and social engineering. This year, and all the previous, at least 5 years prior to that, and for now 6 years in a row minimum, social engineering has been on the top 5 of most prevalent threats. So yes, we love to talk, and technical security is still highly important, but then social engineering attacks have remained at the top of the most prevalent threats throughout years. And it stays on top because we don't do enough about it, and because we think that all there is that we should care about are phishing emails or authentication processes, which are important, but somebody has control over that authentication process that they might give to someone else eventually. And if you read through that report a little bit, further on they go and explain that, yeah, social engineering is actually number 3, but in reality, also ransomware and malware attacks, they are also being facilitated by social engineering. And most of the times, the point of entry for malware and ransomware is, in the end, a social engineering attack. So it's that user. And that leads us to the main point, that in the end, cybersecurity, information security, IT security, all these overlapping worlds, they are not just a technical challenge, but they are also a behavioral one, because it's the people who have access to technology, to information, to systems, to assets, and they are also the ones who have the power to transfer this access, information, and so on, to threat actors if they are not careful and if they are not aware. So as long as they can provide that access, they are responsible for it. But do they know it? Do they know what they are supposed to defend against? Do they understand that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility? And do you keep that in your radars as well? For cyberattackers, it's just a really easy thing to do. Go for the social engineering attack. It is low cost, it is low effort, but it is high reward. And also, yes, you all do an amazing job. You build secure systems, security technology advances. Year after year, we do better, and we should be doing better, but human psychology remains the same. And we just let it be. We just let it be in terms of delivering proper awareness. We don't. So it keeps working and it will keep working. So we keep having a user that we like to say, oh, they are the weakest link. I don't want to have anything to do with them. They doesn't understand. And at the same time, we underinvest in them. What do you expect? So the basic psychological wiring has remained the same. Triggering those psychological wires and the stimulus response effect in those triggers has remained the same, has remained consistent and consistently successful. So we will keep seeing social engineering being at the top chart, and we will keep seeing it being a big problem unless we also decide to take it a bit more seriously. How do they even find those entry points and those triggers? We said they're psychological triggers. They are not so difficult to identify because we are social creatures and we like to talk about them. You have the people that feel very alone and need a company, and you saw that Marcella specifically targeted males during COVID that were lonely. We have the people that say, oh, my weakness is poker, or I need more money. And what have we seen happens with these individuals? Oh, okay, I can give you some money. What do you give me back? What are you going to provide? I can help you feed your addiction. I think it's really cool. You go ahead, go do it. But I just need one little piece of information. It's not going to harm your organization. I just want to know about it. And guess what? It does harm. But we like to justify those wrong decisions when we don't know what's behind them. Or in other cases, open source intelligence. It's not only our social media that compromises us, it's all the digital footprint that we leave online. Also employee review websites. Who do you think is going to receive the most phishing calls? The departments that are stressed, overwhelmed, and will prioritize efficiency and getting things done more than having to analyze their decisions. How do they find those departments? Open source information. It's publicly available. And how many of you actually run OSINT and OSINT research on your confidential information? Has any of you ever done that or considered doing this? Yes, we have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people, 6, 9, 10. 10%, because you were about 100. We allow a lot of easily exploitable information out there. Password leaks are online. They can be found on the clear web. We have confidential information. We have business partners deciding to disclose a little bit too much about the technologies they provide to your company, which allows for a lot of exposure that is unnecessary. And we have come across contract breaches in terms of how much information they disclose. But as long as nobody checks on them, no knowledge, no liability. And on a personal level, this comes from my personal file. When we do conduct profiling on targets for the vulnerability assessments, these are some of the things that a threat actor can spot about you through your social media and can thread into an attack eventually. What a mess. Mia Ash was not supposed to exist just because that threat actor wanted to have an easier life. So originally they said, okay, enough. We're not going to hassle too much. We're going to send out to those specific targets that we have a phishing campaign, mass phishing campaigns, delivers a remote access tool, and then we can even go for beers. It's going to be quick and easy. But it didn't work. Behind Mia Ash was, in fact, a group called Cobalt Gypsy. They also targeted the critical infrastructure, telecommunications, government, defense, oil, and other industries. The phishing email campaign didn't work. Those specific targets had enough awareness. So what did they decide to do? Let's employ a persona. They invented Mia Ash. Mia Ash was a fake identity who was used to perform reconnaissance and build trust with targets. And she did exactly what Marcella did. Same story, different personality, different threat actor. She was building trust and rapport, initiate conversations with potential victims based on common interests, specifically photography. And once they were on the hook, she would escalate them to their social media profiles until they would be at work and she would say, hey, I really value your opinion on this. Please, I want to participate in a challenge. I will send you this file. If you can take a quick look and give me your feedback, it would be incredibly precious. And what happened? The individual got compromised. She would send that file to the work email. They would open it, and it would deliver the remote access tool. Phishing didn't work. This spear phishing, in a sense, campaign, but was a lot more elaborate, worked fantastically. But then again, if we have to put all these attacks into one report and one umbrella, we would say that, yeah, they were all phishing attacks. And then we just think of the classic campaigns, but it's not like that. Huge mess. What can we do against this threat? It is a little bit more elaborate. It is getting a bit more nasty than it used to be. There is one rule, and that is there are no rules, and nobody is exempt. We have to know what elicitation techniques are. We have to know what social engineering is and how this works. There are three very, very broadly and very widely, usually, very favorite elicitation techniques. We said this is an effort to collect specific sensitive information blended in a seemingly innocent conversation. And these are the technique of flattery. Like we said before, oh, you are the only one who can give me good feedback on that, and I would appreciate nothing more but your opinion if you can only check this file and give me your opinion. This is an elicitation technique. The second one is the tribal feeling. Hey, so from one IT pro to another, we are thinking of employing this tool, and maybe you can give me your opinion on this. What hasn't been working for you? Like, I'm really curious to know, and just, we have to exchange. We are in the same industry. So I had some conversations yesterday, and I'm happy to report that some of you can keep good boundaries and don't disclose sensitive information. And then the last one is empathy and having that shoulder to cry on. People want to be heard, so in this case, very common phenomenon is to ask, oh yeah, how was your day? We all like to talk about our days. Terrible day, what happened? Did your boss tell you something? Or like we said before, you're starting this new project and it's difficult. I'm here, I'm a listening ear. If you want to vent, I'm gonna listen and ask a couple of questions. So the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency has given a report on those techniques and the countermeasures. We think it's not cybersecurity. It is. In cybersecurity, this is highly relevant. And the principles are very simple. Know what information should not be shared. Know what is confidential and what is not publicly available, not just you, but also your people, your users. Be suspicious of people who seek this information. And do not tell people any information they are not authorized to know anyway. And sometimes you're going to get the individuals that pry a little bit too much on specific pieces of information because they think they can make it. And they're going to come back to the topic and pressure you again. And if it doesn't work, they will say something else. Yeah, maybe you have another drink in this networking event, and then they will get back to the topic. And it's good to, at that point, start getting suspicious and say, hey, you really insist on this? Why? And usually this will stop them because they understand that you are aware enough. And last, the typical advice we have in InfoSec: do not click on links, download and enable attachments from online strangers because they are still strangers, and avoid typing credentials in websites that you go through links to. On another note, we also have our high-value targets. Many of you probably have your executives on the website. They have to have a very public presence. And guess what? Really difficult. They require a different approach. They require to be viewed different, spoken to differently. Sometimes they think they are above the InfoSec laws of the company and the policy, but they are still very high-value targets. I said before that we conduct vulnerability assessments. There are 5 areas we look into. I would recommend you to look into those 5 areas as well. What is their criticality of their role, their degree of importance? Are they single points of compromise when it comes to specific information? Not only executives, but also teams that work on sensitive projects. Are they recognizable? Are they somewhere on a website, or do they have a very public image? Which, fair enough, they might need to have that public image. And then if they do, if you know who they are, is it easy to approach them? Can you find them at events? Some of them have security details and are not approachable. Others are very open and communicative. And if these three things are a yes, can you find an exploitable vulnerability? If they have social media, if they have given interviews, if they have disclosed personal information, and then if you have a capable adversary, chances are they will find vulnerabilities. And I have worked these cases, so I can definitely tell you there are obvious vulnerabilities at times. But then even if all these things are in place, what is their level of detections and response? Do they know where to set the boundary? And I want you to think as well, how many of you have educated your executives on this threat, or are aware of that they know what's happening and that they know how they could be targeted? Do they have the knowledge and skills necessary? And now I know some of you are already thinking, too advanced and not for me. Our people just fall for the simple phishing emails, so I'm not going to bother with the more elaborate campaigns. They are already too low. We cannot rest it on that. We cannot just say, oh, they fall for the phishing emails, forget the rest, knowledge is a liability, I don't want to hear about this. Because it's not going to get any easier. We're not going backwards in time. They will only become more elaborate. And it's not that big of a challenge if you think. The most common things we hear from people that have been compromised is that, oh, yeah. So I remember the case, my laptop is compromised, yeah, okay. I thought something was off, but I didn't know how to respond, so in the spur of a moment, I just went with it. That means their training was only awareness training, and it didn't give them actionable skills to also respond to these attacks, because social engineering puts you under pressure. They will put you under pressure. They will press where it hurts. And they want you not to know how to respond, so that the easy way out of it is, okay, just went with it and called it a day. They said, I didn't report it because I felt that I would also be implicated and I didn't want to be fired. That's bad security culture most of the times. It means that you blame your people for doing security mistakes. We had Diana's presentation earlier where she said, you need to listen to the people and first ask why? Why did this happen? And not just say, this was stupid. You are the weakling. Sorry. Everybody please point at Tom for being the silly person who opened that phishing email. It doesn't work that way. This is taking us backwards. And then, of course, me, a target? Never. I have nothing of value to provide. And you have access to the 15 accounts that have a lot of sensitive information. Yes, no one is exempt. And of course, the last one, I was under a lot of time pressure. My manager appreciates productivity over security, and he wouldn't appreciate that verification call. It has happened 1,000 times. That's also security culture and having a security mindset. So is this the Wild West? Yes, it is the Wild West. There are no laws. Cyber threat actors will do anything and everything to compromise your user, to make sure that your systems don't work, or they work, but it doesn't matter because I found a way around it and I managed to circumvent it. It's absolutely the Wild West, and you are called to go and put some law and order in this place and make sure that the whole population knows what's happening and how to deal with this mess. And it's gonna get messier. So yes, we should have the physical security in place, the analogy of the castle. We should have our walls, we should have our security doors, the badges, access control on the technological level. We should have our weapons, our firewalls, security technology, and authentication measures. But we also need to make sure that the population doesn't open those back doors to strangers, that they don't just hand over their credentials, that they don't just download links from online strangers, and that they know what the tricks and tactics are and are prepared to respond when they observe suspicious behavior. There is hope. In psychology, one really nice element that we learned about the brain is that there is neuroplasticity, which means that we can reshape our brain to learn new things and automate knowledge, which means that if you learn it right, eventually it will stick in your brain. You won't have to spend conscious energy on identifying red flags, but they automatically get recognized as red flags. This is what you should aim for. This is what does not happen with boring video trainings, but this is what happens with interesting, relatable, and engaging trainings. And the goal is to just create those automations. Oh, this is a red flag, I've heard about this before, it doesn't feel right, and I know how to respond to it. And that's the goal. That's what you want to have. They can learn. They are not the weakest link, they are the most ignored link. Or the most wrongly approached link, I would say as well. And as we close this day, overall, there is a lot we can do. There is a lot we can do on a technical level. There is a lot we can do on the human level. When it comes to the humans, yes, it still matters to minimize their decision making and apply the principle of least privilege. But remember, in the end of the day, they will hold keys to the kingdom. So, good quality training that actively engages the attendees, that is relatable, that is interesting. Then, of course, the cybersecurity mindset, either through cybersecurity champions, through culture, through having a well-educated leadership and hopefully a good perspective, will change the overall culture, or just the way things are done around here should have cybersecurity in mind. And then running exercises and attack simulations after people have received the knowledge. We don't want to make them feel like fools. We just want them to teach them what can go wrong and then show them how. And if you are feeling it, conduct these vulnerability assessments to make sure that you have identified information that could put your organization at risk and have removed it so that an attacker can have as little as possible to exploit on your organization. There are a couple of resources here. If you do want to learn more about social engineering, I am a firm believer that we don't know enough. People don't know enough about what it is, what the kill chain is, how attacks work, but also the elicitation booklet from the National Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency of the US is very descriptive, absolutely recommended. And as we are coming to the end of this day, you learned a lot. I want you, as you walk home, to start thinking of what are the 2 or 3 things I learned today that I can apply in my work, that I can do better, or what did I learn today that I can start incorporating into my world, into my company, and make my systems more secure and help my users not mess it up. Thank you for being here and thank you for today, and it was a pleasure talking with a lot of you.